The Finance Committee meeting for Wednesday, April 28th, 2021. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Lear?
Present.
Mr. Swanson? Mr. Hess?
Present.
Ms. Polk?
Present.
Ms. Weber?
Present.
Mr. Payton?
Present.
Ms. Parker?
Present.
Mr. Kinzier? Mr. Fairfield?
Present.
Mr. Featherling?
Present.
Mr. Dunnell?
Present.
Mr. Miller?
Present.
Mr. Long?
Present.
Mr. Hunter?
Present.
Mr. Wheeler?
Present.
Mr. Seroy? We have a quorum.
Thank you. I have no request for public comment. Are there any requests for public comment? Seeing no requests, there are no presentations. Approval of the minutes from March 24th. Those have been distributed. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Long with a motion. Is there a second? Mr. Payton?
Polk.
All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
And on Zoom?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, all on Zoom, Fairfield, Dunnell, and Polk said aye. Finance Committee, Mr. McCarty, if you'd come up, please. You have the reports in your packet. As he's coming up, you can begin to review those. It starts with the miscellaneous financial reports, starting with the sales tax analysis. Good morning. Are there comments you would want to make on the various revenue sources?
That was a pretty positive month so far. There we go. Not that you can't hear me, but pretty positive month overall with the various tax collections. So unless somebody has a specific question, we got a lot to cover today, so I won't spend a lot of time
All right.
on these unless there's a specific question.
Are there any questions on those various revenue reports? I'm seeing none. We can move then to cash flow, please.
All right, cash flow, we're gonna spend a little bit more time on this month. We're in our, I don't know if you wanna call it the toughest time or the lowest time, whatever you want to identify it as, but as we look at it, it's very similar this year as to last year. If you look at the FY21 months of February, March, April, and you know what May and June projected as at this point. So it is a little tight. You know, when we get into as we about ready to cross over into May and June here, that represents less than 2 payrolls, you know, in the bank at any given time. So,
Mr. Hunter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You don't anticipate any tax anticipation warrants or anything?
no, we'll be able to make it. It's just an explanation of where we're at right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
To further explain, I brought in the third page of the cash. It's at the top. It's normal trial balance, and then 10122 First American Special Funds. Just to give you a little perspective of interfund borrowing and the cash position, especially the general fund right now, and as we head into potentially receiving the money from the feds for the recovery plan. I just thought a little perspective might help. The credit balance column on a cash report like this one means negative cash. Debit balance is positive cash. So when you look at interfund borrowing, this is in a nutshell how we interfund borrow, and the bottom line is basically the amount that we work with. But if you look at, if we use round numbers, the general fund is a negative of about 3.2 currently after last week's payroll. So this was taken on the snapshot on Monday afternoon. we anticipate, if you look at the reports, another $1.2 million drop in cash getting through May, especially, you know, in these months without property tax distribution. So you take 3.2, another 1.2, you know, you're in 4.4 range. Now, take in mind, if we were able to get the money from the feds and recover some lost revenues and such from the general fund, in perspective, to get through and not interfund borrow, it would take nearly $4.5 million to $5 million just to be at zero. So just a little perspective on where cash is. So fund balance and cash are separate discussions. You know, we know that the on paper the general fund is positive fund balance, about 1.8 million roughly, but we have not made it to a positive cash on hand yet for the general fund. So when we see numbers moving here, and we're planning on things for the and we're hopeful, we don't have the details yet of what we're able to use all that for and how much we'll be able to potentially get for the general fund. But I just wanted to bring perspective that as of today, you know, the general fund is 3.2 million negative cash. So you can imagine anxiety if that was your personal checking account, you know, and having to deal, and that's been that way since about 2011. So we're hopeful to be able to get out, not have to have these conversations, but for full perspective, this is the current and the exact amounts that we're dealing with, and what it would take to be able to do this without. So $4.5 million of cash, just to say you're at zero, that's still quite a climb that we need to make, you know, for the general fund. So so just a little perspective and a bigger picture of the balancing act that it takes to get through this time of year before property tax distribution happens. So I just wanted to bring a full perspective for you as we head in, and we're going to have a lot of conversations, and you know, there is a lot of money going to show up and be discussed, but I didn't want the general fund, the perspective of the general fund, to be lost in that big discussion, you know, and the dollar amounts that were coming up. So I don't know if there's any questions on that.
Mr. Feathering.
There's no way of knowing exactly what you'll be able to receive or what you will receive, or do you have some way to calculate that?
Not yet.
Are you turning in an estimate to anybody what your cost lost is?
Not yet. Not until the details are out and I open up the program.
So you pick a date and say, okay, this is before that date, I'm minus this much. Is that what you're going to do, probably?
Well,
from last, compared to 2 years ago?
I mean, these reports that we give you, like the sales tax report, you know, they go back for fiscal year, just for sales tax, the first one, you know, the fiscal year 20 difference for sales tax was rounded $360,000 loss. So hypothetically, we would say for sales tax, we'd submit 360,000, you know, of lost revenue and sales tax to the feds.
Okay.
You know, and basically go through, you know, these reports and say, if they allow it, you know, then we'll try to recover for the general fund, you know, these amounts. So like bed rental was just right at the doorstep of $3 million loss last year. So so these are potential. It's just the final and the all the detail is not out yet for that program. We might actually receive the money before we know what we can actually do with it. So
when would you know when that money will be available? It just shows up in the mail?
Well, they put out the latest update is they put out a pre application email, if you will, to say gather all this information. This is what you're going to need to apply when they open it. So we have all that because we use it for every other federal grant.
So you're ready to go if you get
we're ready to go. So we just don't know when that door is going to be open. Then you make that application. I'm sure the chairman will have to sign something. And then it's still a matter of then when when they're going to send the money. We don't, it's a step-by-step thing. So hopefully we'll have some detail here soon so that we can start planning on details, with details. And then I don't know if they'll have an application process. We're not sure about all that yet. So
can I ask one more, Steve? Do you know if will you send an email out to say, hey, the money's gonna be here next month, or would that, we have to wait all the way to the next county board meeting to know?
But just a minute, Mr. Wheeling, if you would yield the floor to
Sure.
the chairman.
I have answers. The distribution, half of it comes the first year, half the second year. Within the first payment is within 60 days of the signing of the bill. And we're about, what, 35, 40 days in right now?
Yeah, I believe May
Something like
11th.
that. Yeah,
May
something like
11th
that. So
pops
yeah,
up. That was the-
and it will automatically be deposited into our account. Once I sign the paperwork saying that we'll take it, that's why we had to vote on that at the full board meeting, so we wouldn't have to wait a whole nother month to accept the money. So when I get that email, it will automatically just get deposited. We won't know that it's here until it's here. I wish we could say that they're gonna tell us, but they're just gonna deposit it directly.
Mr. Featherling, I hear you're asking an email to go out to this committee when that deposit is,
Well,
Put
when
in
he's
a bank?
notified of when it will be, so we're not, I mean, I don't know if that's.
if you want that information, I think,
I mean, I'd get Andy to send it to me if I ask him.
if you want that information, I think that it could be okay.
Yeah,
to-
we could do that.
Yeah,
All right, to this committee, that,
Yeah.
when that deposit is made, Mr. McCarty will send an email to committee members.
Thank you. I hope I could help clarify that. There's really not a whole lot more information than the day it was signed, as far as
Right.
what you can use it for and then when exactly it's gonna be here. We just know what the deadline is. And then the cities who get their money from the states could be up to another 30 days longer than that. So we could end up getting it first, or the states may get it tomorrow and send it to the cities. We don't know about them. It's a different source. Ours is direct from the Department of Treasury. I just want to clear that up. The one thing I wanted to mention, though, is that I don't want the committee or anyone else to have the impression that we're in the negative on our bank accounts. Okay? Because I want to make sure that's clear, because much like the county or a personal person having a vacation fund, and this is for the bills, and sometimes you move some from the vacation fund in to pay a bill, we're not in the negative. Okay? We're in a much better position than we were 3 years ago, infinitely. But that doesn't mean we don't need to have that other 4 million sitting in the bank, so we don't need to shift money around. That's the best possible position to be in, and we were on target to be there now if COVID wouldn't have happened. So I just want to mention that. I didn't want any misconception among the committee that it's dire and we're spending money that is not in the bank and all that other stuff. It's just we have to shift fund money around, and then at the end of the year, it's all balanced back out. Thanks.
Any other questions in regard to cash flow or comments you want to make?
No, that's all I had.
I don't see anything on Zoom. Let's go to the packet where it has claims recommended not for approval. You have several items here. In a previous committee, because there are several items, some history behind a few of these would probably be important, and then we'll take a motion to, if the committee wishes, consolidate all of these and vote on them as one, or if they wish to vote individually, you can do that. The first one here, of course, is the tire change item, and in that case, there was a police chase, I would call it, that went into Iroquois County. A deputy was down there as a result of that, and while he was there, a tire was lost and had to be replaced. So that's the reason behind that one. You notice the objection to the one is an objection to a name. I think that's something that can be, the committee can decide whether that's necessary to hold things up until a different form is filed.
Mr. Chairman, Amy Ludke already responded that she
Okay.
was working on changing that at the location.
All right, so they've
It
indicated
did get passed to someone else, for use, and they're just gonna update the name.
they're going to update that already. That change is in process then. Is there any information you want to share in terms of the tire change item?
The sheriff,
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second? Mr. Featherling.
Second.
You move to combine and approve?
Right.
All right. Discussion on any of these?
I have a question.
Mr. Wheeler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was wondering if the sheriff can tell me when the auditor or his employee called them to discuss these, what did they ask for? What was the subject of the phone calls? They never called you? They just denied the claim and didn't call? It's one of the, I had a feeling. We don't get phone calls to discuss things, we just get refusals to pay bills. Or not pay bills, to authorize the payment of the bill.
Any other discussion? If there's no other discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mr. Hess. Aye. Ms. Poe,
Aye.
Ms. Weber. Aye. Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Ms. Parker. Aye. Mr. Fairfield,
Aye.
Mr. Featherling,
Yes.
Mr. Dunno,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Long, Mr. Hunter,
Yes.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye.
Motion carries.
We move to the monthly claims report. Is there a motion to approve the monthly claims?
Oak.
By Dr. Oak, second by Long. Any discussion on the monthly claims? Hearing no discussion, we'll move to a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mr. Hess. Aye. Ms. Poe,
Aye.
Ms. Weber. Aye. Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Ms. Parker. Aye. Mr. Fairfield,
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunno,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Long,
Aye.
Mr. Hunter, Mr. Wheeler.
Aye.
Motion carries.
IMRF 2022 estimated rates. Mr. McCarty?
Yeah, you have three documents included in your packet. First one is the preliminary notice of IMRF contribution rate for 2022. And then I included some rate perspective for the last number of years, just to show the trend. And then Anita also did some perspective on year-to-year change that I included as well for you. So this is really update information. It is good news because it is lower, and we'll save some money in that regard. I believe the return on investment was 14.25, if I'm remembering correctly. It was in the 14% range that IMRF the return on investment last year, so that reflects back into the rate. So, this is update information with some added perspective. So I don't know if anybody's got any specific questions or not. So,
Are there questions? Ms. Weber?
Thank you. There's a sentence on Anita's email, that the last sentence of her email said, the closer we get to fully funded pension, the more this adjustment decreases. So what kind of perspective, what timeline is there for fully funded pension?
Well, the rates, if you look at the very top of the IMRF, it's on a 21-year amortization period for most employers, as it says. So, and else we would make added payments to catch up. They do that on a longer term amortization. So yeah, we obviously made headway in that, but we would have to somehow, some way, start making up lump sum payments in order to really close that gap. So they do that over a period of time as far as the rate changes and stuff.
Other questions? We need to accept this rate?
No, this is just this is just a notice.
This is just a notice.
Yeah.
All right. If there are no other questions on that, we'll move to the update on the county's fiscal policy and procedures.
Yeah, we had an internal audit of one of our federal pass-through grants, a state it's one of those that we barely received hardly any money from, but they're Johnny on the spot with double checking stuff. So there's some highlighted areas here for their recommended changes. There is one additional in the it was after this went to print and I sent it to Kelly. On the contracts and leases, they were looking for, or they'd like added the name of the person authorized to enter into contracts on behalf of the organization. Well, that would be the chairman, as voted on by the full board. So this language was updated and we've sent this off, including Anita had something that went yesterday that added HIPAA specifically into it. So these are for petty cash, cash drawers, some specific payroll allocation, and then contracts, how the board handles contracts. So some basic recommendations for updates. So we've included these. We've sent them on to the state's attorney's office for review, and then once the board, the committee and the full board approves it, we'll send the updated manual on to the grant agency and everything will be done. So, I don't know if there's any questions there.
Other questions? Mr. Hunter?
Yeah. Steve, how big a grant was this?
If we would have received all of it, maybe 35,000. I think we received 10,000. If I have the numbers right in my head. So, yeah,
Okay.
it's not a huge thing, but yeah.
Mr. Wheeler?
Thank you. I was just checking with Anita. I was just looking through this. This is not the right policy and procedure manual that we passed in 2019. This is the previous one because none of the duties of accounting in this document are not listed in the auditor's office, which we approve sending those accounting duties to the auditor.
I
So
wish to table this.
I don't think we should table it. I think we should approve the adjustment and put it in the appropriate
Yeah,
place
it's
in
in
the
the
manual.
wrong.
This is the wrong
previous one.
policy manual.
I
because
apologize.
If you
for that.
remember, we said that we agreed that the state law said that the auditor should have accounting, so we moved that accounting, and then he sat in this room and said, I'm not doing it. So we can't approve it as this document, we can approve
Right.
the language that needs to change.
Yeah, I think the committee can understand that if we have a motion, well, let's get a motion and then be clear on what we're doing here. Is there a motion to approve these changes? Ms. Weber? Parker seconded for discussion. So the committee members understand that this motion, if that's the intent of the maker, will be approving the language and not the document per se, and that what will be reviewed, and would the maker of the motion include with the approval of the state's attorney
State's attorney
as
review.
a part of review by the state's attorney?
And the board.
Include that in the motion, okay. Then, at that point,
And
we understand that what will go to the full board will be the correct document with these changes
Yeah.
indicated.
Yeah.
thank you. I think, Mr. McCarty, the changes that you made are okay.
Yeah, the highlighted areas are what needs to be added, but we put it in. We're busy with the audit, trying to finish up and other stuff, and grab the wrong document to add these two. So we'll update that. We apologize for that.
All you did was enumerate what you do. The changes
Yeah.
only enumerate what you do.
Yeah.
Is there any further discussion on this? If everyone's clear what we're voting on, I think we could do it by voice vote. All in favor of the motion to approve these changes, say aye.
Aye.
Those on Zoom,
Aye.
Fairfield, Donnell, and Polk all indicated aye. Those opposed, say no. Nay. There are none opposed, so the motion carries. All right, next item.
And the last one I have would be for the creation of a budget amendment for the American Rescue Plan Fund. So the proposed fund number would be 095, and we propose transacting these funds in a separate fund and then So the activity that directly related to it would go in there and then show if anything moves to like general fund or special funds for revenue, lost revenue from the previous year. So it would be a budget amendment because this was not done originally, and also we're creating a new fund. So for all this, so I just thought it'd be best that the board, bless all this as we go forward. So.
Mr. Hunter.
I'll make that form of motion.
All right, there's a motion. Mr. Long seconds. Is there any discussion? I want to be clear on this. When we create this fund, does this mean that in terms of the checking account, the money would flow into the same checking account? Or?
Well, we work with the treasurer's office on that. They're responsible for like which bank and stuff it goes to. So
Okay.
we'll work with them on that.
You'll work
Correction.
with them on that. All right. Are there any other questions on the motion before us? If not, we'll need a roll call on this, and I believe this needs to be a supermajority.
2/3 vote. Yep.
This needs to be a 2/3 vote. Mr. Wheeler.
Just a question, is this within the general fund?
This is separate fund.
Yeah.
So the expenditures will come out of this fund, nothing will be transferred into the general fund, so we won't have to require budget amendments each time we spend money out of this fund?
Correct.
Okay, and I think, does everybody kind of get that? If we were transferring it into the general fund, we'd have to continually amend all of those departments' budgets when we spent that money in that manner. So this is much cleaner, I think, than that. Or else we'd have to get, what, 3/4 vote? of the
2/3.
board?
It's 2/3.
2/3 to amend the budget each time we spend something every month.
I mean,
becomes cumbersome.
at this point, this seems to be the cleanest. I mean, as we learn more, we may have something down the road, but yeah.
Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, I think I remember before we were discussing this large amount of money, you had the personnel to be able to accommodate and monitor this stuff.
Well, we also have approval for additional body if needed. So we're analyzing that along with everything else that's going on
Thank
right
you.
now. So trying to finalize the audit as well, the year-end report. So.
Other questions, comments? If not, a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mr. Hess,
Aye.
Ms. Polk,
Aye.
Ms. Weber,
Aye.
Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Ms. Parker, Mr. Fairfield,
Aye.
Mr. Fetterling,
Aye.
Mr. Dunnell, Mr. Dunnell,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Long,
Aye.
Mr. Hunter,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler. Motion carries.
Is there anything else you have?
No, that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions. We'll have, SKDO will be here next month. They're working hard on, we're working hard to get it complete. Our filing deadline is by the end of May for the year-end report, so everybody's working hard to get it finalized. So they will be here next month.
If nothing more, then thank you. We'll move to the treasurer's office. You have the reports for the treasurer's office in your packet. Is there a motion to combine and approve? Mr. Hess, Parker, with a second. You want to look at those?
Good job, bro.
Any questions you have on those? Seeing no questions or comments. We'll move to a voice vote on that will be adequate. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Fairfield, Dunnell, and Polk on Zoom said aye. Opposed, nay. There are no nays. The motion carries. The Sheriff's Department. Good morning, Sheriff. You have the Sheriff's report in your packet. All these coming up, you can examine that. Good morning.
Good morning.
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 The monthly report you have really, as I advised the Criminal Justice Committee, Our out-of-county numbers were December through March of fiscal year 2020 were basically pre-COVID numbers. As you recall, COVID didn't hit until, at least we didn't start locking down until middle of March. Once March hit, you know, all those numbers after that were kind of post-COVID. And as you can tell by the amount of money that's coming in, it's a little bit less per month. So as far as our out-of-counties for those, our ICE numbers have fluctuated. We've been as low as 18, and we've been as high as 33 over the last probably 6 months. So those numbers aren't moving a lot. And as I'm sure by watching the news, you see that we are kind of in a holding pattern with what's happening. So other than that, on the report, I mean, there's nothing else. Our medical transports have increased, but our transports to Chicago for both the feds and the ICE has really almost been eliminated. Once or twice a month, I think we're going. Everything else is kind of by video, which is truthfully kind of nice. But I imagine that will start to change as we move forward. So,
Any questions on the report? Seeing none, we'll move on.
yeah, I had, and Kelly, of course, as she always does, forwarded the information from the two bids that we received that we opened at the Criminal Justice Committee meeting. I would just say, and it's unfortunate, but one of the bidders did not bid cameras, which was really the intent of what we wanted. They did bid the tablets. So, you know, and as I told the Criminal Justice Committee, and I may have told this committee, I mean, it's advantageous for us to have a system that we know works with everything, so that we don't have one brand of tablet and one brand of in-car camera and one brand of body camera, because the penalties that our legislature has included in House Bill 3653 are significant enough that I do not want to put my officers in a position to end up being charged with a Class 3 felony if for some reason our system fails. So, and it's obviously the committee's choice, but the choices are a little bit limited. If you're looking at GTAC, the proposal from GTAC, and I don't know, the pages aren't necessarily numbered, but the total quote for everything is 317,000, I believe, 317,646. And one of the things to consider, and one of the things that we've often said about body cameras, the iCloud storage, there's a number that is 19,200, which is included in that $317,000 bid, but that is going to be annually. That is a one-year cost. So as much as some people want to say that we're not defunding, we have to come up with that $20,000 somewhere to maintain the system. So you can call it what you want, but the bottom line is every year we are going to have to come up with $20,000 for storage. And again, that doesn't include officers' time, staff's time to provide the body camera footage for FOIAs or for prosecution. However, there is redaction software included in this, so that's a good thing, so that we don't have to go and redact everything. I mean, body camera footage can last 10 minutes, it could last 45 minutes, and in a lot of cases, there's gonna be more than one camera that we have to deal with. So, which again, I'm still convinced that, and I think a lot of law enforcement personnel are convinced as well, that body camera footage is going to protect the officers 99.9% of the time more than it's gonna protect the offenders, so.
So, Ms. Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, we're not experts in this. What do you feel is the best choice for our public safety? The best choice of all of these? We look through this, and I will tell you, it's over my head, and I'm thinking, what is the best for the county sheriffs to have, and for safety of the sheriff, and then to redaction?
Well, you know, we put this out to bid. We published it in the local newspaper as we're required, and unfortunately, for whatever reason, we got 2 bids back, which is somewhat surprising.
That's sad.
One of the reasons that we wanted to do this now is because, I mean, common sense would tell you from a business standpoint that once it becomes mandatory,
And it will.
we feel like the price is going to go up. So we did this now so that hopefully, instead of, you know, paying more than the $317,000 that we have here, you know, we're avoiding potentially $500,000. I know that the Village of Manteno, and I believe the Village of Bourbonnais both use GTAC, and we didn't. We did check with both. Both are happy with it. Kane County also uses GTAC, and I spent a morning up at Kane County talking to him about. And when we talk about things, a lot of times we don't ask, you know, we don't ask about the good things, even though those are included, but obviously we know what the good things are. We ask what the downside of a particular item is. And they told us a few things that they were working through because it was new to them as well. And so we called the company and said, hey, what about these issues? And they have indicated that they have been rectified. And Kane County did confirm that with me. The sheriff of Kane County did confirm that with me. So obviously with these things, you want a company that's going to be responsive and timely and everything else, because we don't want these things going down. Now, it's technology. We all know technology is going to go down at some point, but you know, obviously customer service is important.
Mr. Hunter?
Sheriff Downey, thank you very much. Did you have a team that went out with you?
No, I went by myself.
Myself?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I went by myself because I wasn't going solely for this. I was going for they're running a program in their jail regarding opioids and things like that, that I went and looked at and sat through to see how it worked and what they did.
Okay, and when you came back, I assume you talked with your techies, right?
Oh, yeah.
And those questions were satisfied?
Yes.
Additionally, if I remember correctly, sometimes I do have brain farts and I do forget stuff. But
we all have them, Mr. Hunter.
You said that you were going to buy some backups as well too, or extras or something.
So right now now understand that we have, I believe, 30 deputies on the road, 3 shifts. So this calls for 40 cameras.
Okay, breakdowns.
Which includes cameras for our investigators who go out. And so, yes, there are some extra.
Okay.
Ms. Weber.
Thank you. The cloud is listed twice. There's one
Correct.
amount of 19.2 and another amount of 21.6, and those are all different devices then?
I don't know.
One has 40 and one has 45 quantity.
So the body cameras. One is, so, oh yeah, you're right. So one is the body cams, the body worn cameras, and the other one are the in-car cameras.
Oh, good.
But we are already paying for some storage for in-car cameras now, so.
But what you had said is those two numbers are annual,
Yes,
both in both
correct.
cases.
Mr. Long.
So what you're getting is in-car computer, body cam, video that's gonna take video out the windshield.
Yes,
And you're gonna be able
They
to
can't hear
download.
Just a minute.
hold on a sec. There you
I
go,
had the wrong.
there you go. Start over.
Start over?
Sorry.
I don't know if
My
I can.
error.
You're gonna get in-car computers.
Yes.
You're gonna get body cams.
Yes.
You're gonna get cameras that show through the windshield what's
Yes.
going on outside there, and it's
Yes.
gonna download automatically to the iCloud or whatever
Yes.
cloud we're talking about.
Yes,
Does it interface with the New World system somehow? How does that gonna work?
that I don't know, but I don't believe so. I don't believe that it interfaces with New World.
Gonna be easy enough for your personnel to retrieve, and
Yes.
the retrieval
Yeah.
part, it looks
Yeah,
like something that's
so
doable.
how it works now, basically the officers pull into our lot after their shift and they download that stuff right there from their car onto the server into the cloud. So they don't have to do it manually, it does it automatically.
And you mentioned previously in a meeting that some of the other municipalities are also interested in joining us.
So, yes, St. Anne, and I think Aroma Park already has body cameras, but I don't know to what extent. But I know St. Anne has definitely shown an interest in, now that would be in addition to this, which would not obviously affect us.
Correct.
But yes, they would be interested as well.
Thank you.
We've had quite a bit of discussion. Is there a motion to please the committee? Mr. Hunter? A motion to accept which? Gentech, all right. Is there a second on that? Parker? Mr. Wheeler?
Thank you. I was trying to find it, and I think I finally found it. It's a 3-year limited warranty on equipment.
Yes.
That's on cameras and the laptops?
Yes, but there is also, after 25 months, I believe, they provide us with new cameras.
New cameras. Okay,
Yes.
that was good. Yeah, I remember that part from
Yes.
before, yeah. Now, the other was support, operating system support. Is there upgrades? I'm sure if you don't know, I'm sure your tech guys could feedback, but you know, let's just say we go to Windows 12 or 13 or whatever, do they handle those upgrades? That's one of the things. Or is there a software support that we have
They'll work with our IT people to get that.
to do it?
Mhm.
Okay, all right, because that's, that could happen next week. We don't
Right.
know when those new things come
Yeah,
out.
at the most inconvenient time, usually.
Yeah. Y2K.
Other questions, comments?
If I could add too, just so we try and alleviate some of this cost, as most of you know, some of the parts of House Bill 3653, they do offer grants for the cameras only, not for everything else. And we had, and the other reason that we kind of sped this process up is they need the number so that we can submit this grant prior to, they have to have the number prior to approving any grant. So now that we have the number, we can apply for the grant, assuming that we will get it because we meet all the specs and all the requirements. The cost will be, well, I don't want to say significantly, but will be less than what that final number is. So whatever the grant covers, will be less. So the motion, I don't know if you want to include part of the motion to say minus any funds we receive from grants or whatever, but
Not to exceed.
not to exceed the 317 or whatever.
Mr. Hunter, you accept not to exceed?
Yeah.
Ms. Parker? All right, we'll include that as part of the motion, not to exceed. Mr. Wheeler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We also have to keep in mind that a portion of this can be charged to tort, and we did look into that as well. It won't be general fund money. It's the cloud storage, I think, is something that has to be general fund and all of those types of things, but the actual equipment, I believe, was the information. I'll go check the email. But it shouldn't be all part of the sheriff's general fund or a capital development spend. It would be, it'd be tort, yeah. Because
Like that a lot.
it is really risk management and those things, it's legitimate, so.
If that's understood by the committee, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Ms. Weber?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Dennell?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Great discussion. I vote aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mr. McCarty, did you want to comment?
Yeah, if I could just ask a question, I haven't seen the contract, the payment schedule, and if we're waiting for the grant, will this take us into like maybe July because of our current cash situation, or?
Oh, yeah, I can't imagine us getting this equipment before then. I mean, this is gonna be a process to then call the company, say, hey, you received it. They will then start building the whole system.
I wasn't sure of timing and what.
Yeah, I think
what
we should be okay. I'm looking at probably July, August.
Okay.
Is there anything else you have for us?
No, I just want to say thank you to everybody. I think, I think you've done the community a big favor by having these things. I think it's going to benefit everybody. So thank you to all you guys. You guys have a tough job.
Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, in service, we're gonna have some kind of demonstration at some point.
We can.
Yeah.
I mean, once we get trained on it, we'll obviously have to, with the body cameras, the in-car cameras are something we have now, but once we have the body cameras, yeah, sure, we can take some that actual occurrences and show the committee if you choose. I mean, they're public record. So, yep.
Mr. Feathering, did you have a comment?
No.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody.
The auditor's office. We have a report. Is there a motion in regard to the report? Mr. Hess.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion that we put this on file after we remove all the political statements in it again this month.
Is there a second to that motion? Mr. Feathering seconds the motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion. I think a voice vote would be adequate on that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Fairfield, Donnell, and Polk said aye. In terms of the Zoom, those opposed? Hearing no opposed, the motion carries. Is there any other business come before the committee? Old business. You have something from the coroner's office. Mr. Kavanagh, are you here?
Morning, can you hear?
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're just seeking approval to declare a 2012 Ford Escape as surplus equipment. We replaced this vehicle with a 2021 Ford Explorer on the state bid recently. So if we could just get a motion to approve that, we'd appreciate it.
I know, I see that.
Do you want me to repeat that?
Fairfield.
There's a motion by Mr. Fairfield to approve that declaration of surplus. Is there a second?
Polk.
Long. Discussion. Mr. Feathering?
I could not understand what Mr. Cavender was saying. I didn't hear.
Mr. Kavanagh, could you share again what you said? We have a little trouble.
we're just requesting that the 2012 Ford Escape be declared surplus equipment. We've replaced this vehicle with a 2021 Ford Explorer with the state bid just last week. So we're hoping just to pass this vehicle along.
Thank you.
Mr. Hunter, do you have?
Just clarification on, you can declare it surplus. Now, how do you dispose of it in terms of, can you allocate it to a different governmental unit, or is it up for public a bid, or what?
We could, in this case, we were hoping to trade it in and get the trade-in value to help offset the cost of the new vehicle.
Okay.
Okay, we'll need a roll call vote on this.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mr. Hess,
Aye.
Ms. Polk,
Aye.
Ms. Weber, Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Ms. Parker,
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield,
Aye.
Mr. Featherling,
Aye.
Mr. Dunnell,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Long,
Aye.
Mr. Hunter, Mr. Wheeler. Motion carries.
Is there a motion before us, Mr. Hess?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Featherling? All in favor, say aye. Opposed?